You're up.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that most of us here have picked up an item, looked at the label, and it said made in China. Now, I don't know about your guys' mothers, but mine and my girlfriend's have always said, ugh, made in China. I've wondered, why do they say it with that kind of disdain? So today I'm going to tell you the reasons as to why made in China, which is exporting to different countries, isn't a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. I'll be reinforcing these 2 points by saying that, 1, things are cheaper, and 2, it improves the relations of the countries that are involved. So for fact number 1, when things are cheaper, let's face it, everybody likes paying a less price for something if they can. It's not necessarily, like, it can be a lower price because it's lower quality, but if you look at it, the things that made in China, they aren't really that high of a quality to begin with. So it's kind of a shoot off there. So I've lived in America most of my life, spent a long time here, and I'm very prideful of it, and I do get annoyed when people bash on it. But the fact of the matter is, America cannot support all the things that we buy here. In an interesting fact stated by Economics Online, they said America has 20% of the items manufactured in America, whereas China is only 12%. So I was wondering, what is it that America is actually making more of as opposed to China? And through my research, I found that it was aerospace, machining, vehicle manufacturing kind of things, and electrical components. And just because something was made in China, it's not that everything goes to China. It could be that it was designed in America by the engineers here. Then it was sent off to China to make it cheaper, which is a good thing for us. And the reason why things are cheaper in China, this is stated by Industry Week Online, is wages, to be the first one. The factories in China, they don't pay their people as much, and that's kind of sad, but it is good for us because then we don't have to pay as much. Then the safety regulations and all the tests that they have to go through, they're not as strict as here in America, so you don't have to go through all the money of testing it once, then going over it again, then doing it like a 3rd time. The 3rd reason why things are cheaper in China is that China already manufactures so many things that they do bulk buying. And if you buy things in bulk, it costs less than if you buy things individually. I'm pretty sure that you've all noticed that when you buy like a 24-pack of water bottles as opposed to 1. So with all these facts, we go on to my 2nd point of how it improves the relations between the countries. Now, in my opinion, war is pretty bad because it causes a lot of grief, and I don't think that fighting over just land is really a good reason to kill people. So the good thing about trade is that it increases the dependency on countries. In just September 21st, the president of China, Xi Jinping, visited to discuss relations of China and America. And I was watching that kind of conference thing. I noticed that there was substantially less tension between those two than there was between Putin and Obama whenever I've seen those conferences. So I was wondering, why is it that these two are so completely different? I came to the conclusion that it was because China has traded a lot more with America than Russia has. Because for the past 40 years or so, China has been invested in America's manufacturing, along with America being interested in China's manufacturing. In fact, a Chinese industry called Wanzheng invested in 10 factories here, and those factories were going on bankruptcy. And then when they started investing in them, they brought them back. And that company, Wanzheng, has hired over 12,500 American people to create jobs here. So that's really good with that. And then I found another example with America and Mexico. So something that started back in 1965 was this thing called the Maquiladora Initiative. And that is, they create these factories so that the Mexican people who were on the border between Mexico and the US, they got to work in these factories, which increased the unemployment rate, or decreased the unemployment rate. And that actually really helped the relation between Mexico and America because they started depending on each other a lot more. And actually, the relation between these two, that really helped, because there was this thing called the Chaznizal dispute. It's a weird spelling. And what this was is it was a land dispute between America and Mexico because there was a shift in the Rio Grande River. And there was this like a decade or so of argumenting going back between the two, saying, no, it's mine, no, it's yours, or blah, blah, blah. But eventually they were able to come to a peaceful resolution of it, and that was because during the middle of that conflict, they had that Maquiladora thing. So once they started doing that, relations started getting increased. So with those two things combined, that leads to the conclusion of my speech. And with the conclusion, I went over, one, why it's cheaper to buy things and how that's really good for us, and two, it improves the relations between two countries. After all, I was made in Canada, and now look how good America and Canada have it together.
Well, I neglected to remind people who was doing the evaluation here. Dakota's supposed to do the written evaluation. He's not here. And Nicole is supposed to do the oral evaluation, and she's not here. So my neglect has not had any negative consequence as a result. Those of you who just came in, you need 7 of these evaluation forms that are up there each. And you go ahead and get those, and I'll explain what you're going to do with them in just a second. Meanwhile, let me make a few comments about Alex's speech. Alex, I like the opening, your attention device by telling the story about how your mom and your girlfriend's mom, kind of turned their nose up at stuff that's made in China and how you wondered why that was an issue. I thought that you had a pretty clear statement of your purpose and a good preview. It was a little bit odd, though, that you start off the first point by kind of acknowledging or dissing the quality of material made in China. I'm not exactly sure that that's a good way to sell the idea that you're making on that first point. The contrast between the United States and China on manufacturing, I thought, was illustrated pretty well with a couple of examples and statistics. I just think that this point needs a little bit more development to be convincing that we're getting a good economic deal here. That I think one of the criticisms that is frequently made of U.S. policy is that we encourage exporting jobs to other places for the purpose that you're talking about. Oh, we get stuff that's cheap, but as a consequence, we have people who can't afford to buy any of that cheap stuff because they don't have jobs or they work at really low wages here, and as a consequence, there are negative, implications there. So there is, I think, a legitimate argument there that I think you need to answer a little bit more. I thought you had a better kind of creative discussion on the second point about why it's beneficial to international relations. The illustrations that you have are simplistic. I think you've got the good emotional explanation, the look at the way Obama is with the president of China versus the way he is with the president of Russia, and the way they you can just see those tensions. I thought that was a kind of a nice way of visualizing the idea. There's probably a lot more information about how much the United States is invested in China and how much China is invested in the United States that would suggest that really we are partners in a variety of ways. The least likely scenario of an attack by the Chinese on the United States, it's like, well, let's blow up our own bank, because that's where a lot of their wealth is. They're depending on us to pay our taxes and pay the debt for all the money that they've lent us. So why would you want your tenant to succeed, and at the moment, we're kind of in the tenant position because we have borrowed so much money over the years. The example that you had of the one company that is, maintained 12 manufacturing plants, I think that's pretty effective. And I think there are other things that you could do. The thing that jumped into my mind immediately, of course, because I'm a movie guy, is that the Chinese theater is now finally owned by the Chinese. So in case you didn't know that, Grauman's Chinese Theater down in Hollywood is in fact owned by TCL, which is a Chinese company. So there you go. There's an example. Otherwise, that might have closed up years ago. So I think you've got a good idea here, and I think you do a nice job expressing it. The presentation issues, there's good variety within the range of your voice. I think you do a good job. Your eye contact with the audience is excellent. You seem to know the subject matter. The only thing that I thought was maybe a little bit iffy was that it seemed the further you got into the speech, the further away from us you got. It was like you were backing up during the whole presentation. And I'm not sure why, but it did seem a little bit disconcerting. But otherwise, your movements seem natural, and your positioning seemed pretty confident. All right, thank you. And those of you who are